Well, just imagine having lunch at Red Lobster with Billy Graham. That's just one memory that Greg Laurie has of his 30-plus years of friendship with Billy Graham. So what was the world-famous evangelist like behind closed doors? Take a look.
Greg Laurie is the pastor of Harvest Christian Fellowship, one of the largest churches in America. He's also preached the gospel message to over 8 million people during his popular Harvest Crusades. In his latest book, Billy Graham, The Man I Knew, Pastor Laurie shares a behind-the-scenes look into his relationship with one of the most recognized, trusted, and iconic figures of the 20th and 21st centuries. It's also a highlight reel of Billy Graham's life, meant to introduce the next generation to a humble man who loved God and changed the world.
Please welcome back to the 700 Club, Greg Laurie. Greg, it's always great to have you with us. Welcome.
Terry, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, like so many of us, you were a longtime admirer of Billy Graham, but it really became much more than that. You were very dear friends. How did you become his friend?
Well, you know, as a little boy, I grew up watching Billy Graham on the black and white television set at my grandparents' house. I became friends with Billy when he came to do a crusade in California in 1985. And I had actually gotten to know his son, Franklin, pretty well already. And then in around the late 80s, Billy asked me to start helping him with his sermon prep because I was just starting my crusade ministry as he was sort of in the final legs of his, and he wanted to find a way to use illustrations to connect to a younger audience. So it was a much younger me, late 30s, and it was my absolute privilege to actually help Billy with some of these illustrations because he was such an amazing communicator, really.
He really was. What was it like for you to be behind closed doors with him? Because you had a friendship that allowed moments like that.
Well, it's an amazing thing to sit with someone who is literally Mr. History. You know, I quote C.S. Lewis. Billy Graham met C.S. Lewis. I read a biography about Winston Churchill. Billy Graham spent time with Churchill and shared the gospel with him. So I just had nonstop questions. I think I probably drove him crazy, Terry, but he was so gracious and loved to talk. He loved to just sort of hang out, actually. He was very accessible, very easy to talk to, very down to earth. He had a great sense of humor. And, you know, he was a very humble man, somebody who really just always saw himself as a country preacher. And that was not a put on fake humility thing. That was a real thing. But I'll say this, Terry, Billy Graham was the godliest man I ever met. I've met a lot of godly men. And Ruth, his wife, who in every way was his equal, was the godliest woman I've ever met. And being in their home and having meals with them and just spending time with them was one of the great joys of my life.
You mentioned in the book that you shared a lunch with Billy at Red Lobster. How did that go?
That was his choice. So we went to Red Lobster, and so we're having a meal, and Billy has a ball cap pulled down over his head. I don't really think those ball caps did him much good because he had such a famous profile. I mean, it could have been chiseled on Mount Rushmore, right? And so pretty soon people are recognizing him because our table was sort of near the outside of the restaurant. It was in a hotel, as I recall, or something like that. And the ironic thing is there was an atheist convention going on. People are walking around with these ID tags from an atheist convention, and they recognize Billy Graham. Sounds like a conflict. But he was so gracious, and people were so excited to meet him. They interrupted our meal many times. He just stopped, took time for everyone, asked them about themselves. You know, when you were with Billy, he didn't talk about himself, as a lot of people do. He wanted you to talk about yourself. He would ask you, tell me about your life. Tell me about this. What do you think of this? And I would think, why would he care what I think? But he did. But it wasn't just with me. It was really with everyone. Sure, he met with presidents and movie stars and famous people and leaders from around the world. But Billy always took time for just ordinary folk. I saw it myself.
You know, Billy was someone that I think everyone looking from the outside would say lived life so well, did what he was created for and called to do. Did he have any regrets?
Well, I think every human has regrets. I asked him if he had any regrets, and he said to me, one regret was based on a conversation he had with President Kennedy. He was at the presidential prayer breakfast. And after it was over with, Billy spoke that day. And after it was over with, the president said, Billy, I'd like you to drive back to the White House with me. I have something I want to talk to you about. Billy said, well, Mr. President, I have the flu and I would love to, but I don't want to get you sick. How about if I come back in maybe a week or so and I'll come visit you? And the president said, that would be fine, Billy. And then tragically, President Kennedy was shot and killed in Dallas only a few days after that. And Billy said to me, my regret is I always wondered what he wanted to talk to me about. He did say publicly in an interview that he regretted not spending more time reading the Bible, praying, and telling the Lord how much he loved him. I introduced a friend of mine to Billy named John, and John thanked Billy for his faithfulness over the years. And Billy said, I wish I could have done more. And I thought, you could have done more. I think you did quite a bit, but that was Billy, and he was very honest about things like that.
Well, and he really approached everything he did like that, giving it his best, always wanting to know that he had done the most that he could. Your book is quite amazing. I mean, when someone writes about someone else and it's hard to put it down, you've done well, Greg Laurie. This latest book is called Billy Graham, The Man I Knew, and it's available nationwide. Greg is also, by the way, the featured speaker at our Week of Prayer Chapel today, so join us. Go to cbn.com at noon Eastern Time. Great book. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thanks for having me on. Folks can order it at Amazon, and there's a great audio version too, Terry, that's really worth listening to.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Wonderful book.